Hello, true duelists. It's YGO Strats Yu-Gi-Oh! Single Card History, where I'm going to be talking about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that absolutely did not in any context. Today's card is actually a series of cards. We're going over the Kaiju, an archetype of monsters that debuted in Clash of Rebellions in 2015 and received support in the following 3 sets after that as the TCG exclusive archetype being released alongside Cosmo. This video is a bit different from my conventional single card histories because I'm not going to be covering one card, but rather an archetype or series of cards. Because despite having unique effects on each of the Kaiju, their primary purpose in 99% of decks is the same, regardless of whichever Kaiju it is you're playing, out the problem monster on the opponent's board. Despite their function being identical in the metagame, the fact that they have different types and attributes have been a key for all sorts of decks at different points in time and in different formats. So I'll mention some of the big ones throughout the years, and what better place to start with the use of Kaijus than with that of the true original Kaiju, Lava Golem. Which I bring up to say that the concept of tributing an opponent's monster to give them a different one is actually almost as old as Yu-Gi-Oh! As itself. This card debuted in 2003, so the concept of tributing an opponent's monsters isn't new, it's just become a lot more convenient over time. Ain't that the trend in Yu-Gi-Oh! The thing is though, Lava Golem took up your normal summon and required 2 monsters on the opponent's field to tribute it. There were other 1 tribute monsters as well before this. Volcanic Queen only needed to tribute 1 monster, but again, cost you your normal summon, and Santa Claus, which finally didn't use your normal summon, but if left on the field would draw the opponent a card to give them free advantage. And even more importantly than that, by the time Krampus here showed up to bring the joy, we essentially already had Kaijus. Technically, Kaijus came out 5 months after Santa Claus, but they made Christmas here irrelevant, so just like the liberals intended, my god. Still, in 2015, we got the Kaiju proper. There can only be 1 Kaiju on each side of the field. They are special summons that do not take up your normal summon to use, and best of all, while they technically have effects, they need an in-archetype spell or trap card to gather the counters that they use for their effects. So in practice, in 99% of decks, they're just vanillas. Used most simply, you tribute a boss monster from your opponent, or a problem negate or floodgate or whatever sort of monster might be on their board that you don't want to be there anymore. When used for that alone, the only thing that matters is the stat line of the monster you give them. And since Kaijus always summon an attack position, and you're summoning it, so you choose the position otherwise anyways, but Kaiju specifically always summon an attack position, the one with the lowest stats quickly became the most popular. And the rise of turtle supremacy was swift. Gameciel is more often than not the Kaiju of choice, for the simple fact that 2200 is the smallest number that you can beat over. Once upon a time, from my memory, that fact alone caused Gameciel to be a $5 rare, despite Kumungus only having 200 more attack and being, a quarter, give or take. This chart here shows the usage of Gameciel since its release, showing it's been a very popular card through the years, and the number of prints it has also shows this. 5 printings, with 3 of them being holos, compared to, say, Kumungus, with 3 prints and only 1 holo. And Gameciel is only popular for being the weakest in the majority of builds playing it. I do want to mention that there were builds of World Chalice that actually went full gamer and played Gameciel not just for going second, but also to set up their board going first. Marco Perico gave the World Chalice its one and only YCS win to date as I make this video, playing the then popular tech for World Chalice of 2 copies of the Kaiju field spell and 1 copy of Gameciel to search it out as part of the end board. Thanks to World Chalice's ability to link spam, especially thanks to Saryuya Skulldread, it was easy to find the field spell more often than not, which after all the link summoning was easy to get counters onto. And with 3 counters you can search out the Gameciel, assuming you didn't already have it, and thanks to pre-errata Firewall Dragon, it was very easy to plop Gameciel down on your own field as part of your strong end board. Because despite Gameciel's weak attack stat, it actually has the strongest Kaiju effect. It is a monster negate that is a banish as well, by removing 2 Kaiju counters, which are put onto the field every time a card is sent from field to grave. As far as I know, this is the only competitive use of Kaiju's effects specifically in the meta, but it's far from the only play they've helped beyond the tried and true have a turtle style of play. Doragon is our our next kaiju, and has been the kaiju of choice for dinosaur decks ever since the release of the Dino Smashers Fury structure deck, with it being searchable off of Soul Eating Oviraptor, making it very easy to tech in to help remove problem monsters from the opponent's board. Whether it's board breaking in Shaddoll dinosaur builds or a true Draco deck from 2017, it's been popular as the kaiju of choice to use for yourself, with Interrupted Kaiju Slumber as well, the kaiju dark hole that I'll get to a bit later in this video. Radian sees play for a few reasons as well. Any sort of deck with a Fiend lock, such as Unchained, or in a deck with a Dark lock, such as Orcust or Phantom Knight. It's also a solid stat line of 2800, and was a very popular choice for side decks in PK Fire for similar reasons, namely that Dark lock. There's also the benefit of Radian that as a Dark attribute, it has synergies in Chaos builds, and even more notably is solid for material to make a Starving Venom Dragon with using Super Polymerization if they have any other sort of Dark monster on board, which isn't exactly rare in Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh, and also Allure can banish this one, and banishing a kaiju really isn't going to hurt your combo lineup, so not a bad card in that regard either. Kumongus, the sticky string kaiju I mentioned earlier, and is our Earth insect, but is most notable for being the second weakest kaiju with only 2400 attack. It shows up sporadically in builds such as Kaiju Burning Abyss, a monster-heavy variant of Burning Abyss that main decked a few kaiju in order to help break boards, and with Kumongus having less than 2500 attack, it was assured to be able to be beaten down by Dante, which, you know, playing Burning Abyss was, you were going to summon that card. It's also very popular as a kaiju to play alongside Interrupted Kaiju Slumber for its lower attack stat, which again I'll get to in a moment. Jizukiru, the star-destroying kaiju, is a level 10 light machine, and with 3300 attack, it's one with a lot of small synergies that have helped it see play in various decks. As a light machine, it can actually also be searched as well, using Cyber Repair Plant in Cyber Dragon decks, specifically since that card requires a Cyber Dragon engraved to use, but that means that it is the searchable kaiju of choice for Cyber Dragon decks, much like Dorrigan is for dinosaurs. It's also even easy to get rid of in Cyber Dragon decks, since assuming they can't beat over it, which how would that ever happen, but assuming, you can contact fuse it away to out the beater. Its level 10 status also made it a choice in kaiju train deck lists, offering an out to problem monsters for the opponent as all kaijus do, and helping make rank 10s by summoning it to your own field once you gave them a kaiju of their own. And there's even special mention to gimmick OTK decks by giving the opponent the 3300 attack light monster and using a card called Leeching the Light to give all monsters you control the same attack as a light monster the opponent controls, meaning all your monsters will gain 3300 attack points, and at minimum, you are about 3 attacks away from lethal. It also saw reliable play in a lot of decks as the Interrupted Kaiju Slumber target of choice to give yourself the biggest of possible beaters. Thunder King, the lightning strike kaiju, is very similar to Jizukiru, but it's level 9 and a thunder type instead. It does have less defense than Jizukiru if that ever comes up, but its role in decks is mostly regulated to the same as Jizukiru, minus the machine synergies that Jizukiru has. Its thunder typing did mean it saw play in some Thunder Dragon decks, although most always as a side deck card. But beyond that, it's mostly been interchangeable with Jizukiru depending on which one looks cooler to you outside of Cyber Dragon. I think I'm mainly just thinking of the Leeching the Light OTK here, don't at me. And lastly is Godarla, a 2700 attack wind attribute insect. This one became very important in 2020 with the release of Simorgh the Bird of Sovereignty, a link 3 that could summon any winged beast from the hand or deck during the end phase, an effect that was almost always used to summon a barrier statue of Stormwinds, meaning the end board would be accompanied by a lovely little floodgate that demanded an answer in the form of an out, be it a board wipe like Raigeki or Evenly Matched, or by going into the battle phase to run over the statue so you could try and play. This play was very commonly associated with Tri-Brigade decks, from Bird Up to Pure, and any other variant that they might have been feeling. The third option to out this card was, of course, Godarla, a wind attribute kaiju. It's fully legal to special summon Godarla by tributing the statue, and that's a play that's not otherwise legal with any of the other kaijus. It was a popular and somewhat necessary card, or at least enough to give it a reprint in Brothers of Legend as the only kaiju monster in that set. It being an insect means it's also a solid kaiju for beat troopers, but primarily it's to out that annoying ass statue. And moving on from all these kaiju monsters, we get to their spell, which played an integral role for them at one point as well. Interrupted Kaiju Slumber is a Dark Hole plus for the game, destroying all monsters on the field and then summoning 2 kaiju to the field, one on your field and one on the opponent's. It can also be banished from the grave, except during the main phase it was sent there, to add a kaiju monster from your deck to your hand. This means you're effectively playing extra copies of Dark Hole on top of having means to search impact your outs. This card is kind of funny since presumably you wouldn't be able to activate it if the opponent already had a kaiju on field, but for whatever reason you can because Konami said you can. So it's Yu-Gi-Oh! Fuck you, move on. We just rule it that way, and that's all there is to say about it. What's even better though is if through some means a kaiju is still on board after this card has already destroyed all the other monsters, like say they Forbidden Lance a kaiju, then you can't summon the kaiju monsters from the deck. So it's just a weird card. It's funny to me. This card saw a huge amount of play in and around 2017 as a popular way to outboard since monster destruction was useful against decks like True Draco and especially Zoodiac. And as such, all kaiju saw a brief spike of play during this period. This was bolstered by the fact that Masterpiece, the True Draco Slaying King, was a card that really needed a kaiju to be outed reliably, it felt like, and it was not only good against Zoodiac, but played in Zoodiac depending on the build. So plenty of people were playing Masterpiece, so plenty more people decided to play kaijus. With the banning of Masterpiece, however, the card fell out of favor. Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, that is. Also thanks in part to it being semi-limited and eventually limited in 2017 because that's just how many people were playing it. It is still a solid card to this day, but it's mostly been power crept thanks to things like Evenly Matched and even Lightning Storm in some aspects, and, you know, the lack of a Masterpiece-esque card in our current format. Even still, kaiju are still popular cards today as just fantastic outs to different monsters on boards. Break My Board styles of decks have only become stronger and more prominent over time, and being able to get rid of a negate from the opponent by giving them a functional vanilla isn't just great for getting rid of the negate, it's in a way that they can't respond to. You can't negate the summon of the kaiju inherently in a way that will preserve your monster unless you're the type of absolute mad lad to main Mask of Restrict to help protect your end boards. And as stated, they only need to tribute one monster and they don't take up your normal summon. This means that unlike cards like Lava Golem or Sphere Mode, if the opponent has monsters as their end board or as part of their end board, there is nothing they can do to prevent them from being kaiju'd, unlike with Lava Golem or Sphere Mode. I covered some of the things that these monsters have been played for, but I'm certain there's other decks that I forgot to mention for specific reasons depending on type and attribute. The variety of types and attributes are even notable for helping to play around some floodgates, namely Rivalry of Warlords or Gozen Match. Sure, I can only summon one attribute, but if Dark's my attribute, I'll always have Radiant in the back pocket. The variety only seems to help them see niche play for various reasons, like with things of Jizukiru in Cyber Dragon, or Godarla against Tri-Brigade, or even Floowandereeze. Overall, kaiju are a phenomenal source of outing to boss monsters and problem monster boards in general. The existence of kaiju alone helps to keep tower-esque decks in check, from meta mites like Masterpiece or Thunder Dragon Colossus, or even less meta but still annoying ones like Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon or Super Quantum Mech King Great Magnus. They've helped make playing against build-a-board decks like Drytron or Spiral playable and offer an extra layer of play to the game, being a key role in the game to help keep no deck from being wholly unbeatable, even if they can't always stop the tier 0 decks from popping up from time to time. At the end of the day, they offer an easy solution to an annoying problem, and all in a way that allows us as players to say the iconic line, "Have a turtle." And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, the kaijus. This is weird, because normally I have a specific card name to say, and that felt a little off-brand. Whatever. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest some cards to review, or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats to impress your smoking Italian wife, and so you too can be a true duelist.